start with the recording. Resume recording. Okay, we are now recording.
Okay. So you will be able to shift my, are you going to be shifting my
I will
slides?
be shifting your slides. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just let
Thank
me
you
know
so
when.
much. Okay. Thank you so
This
much.
is not allowing me to access the caster that I'm aware of, unless this is the screen that it shows after it does the casting.
Okay.
Let me see if I can confirm that it's bumping out towards all of the things. Uh, Facebook, Carillion Membership Hub. Stacy, can you please check Carillion Lustration Live and see if we're streaming there?
Sure.
Um, I do not see us streaming. It says that we're live, but
I'm sure we are.
well, that's okay.
Knowing me.
Even if we're not live, guess what? We have 5 people here, so we can make it a show.
Nice.
I'm just going to presume that everything is working correctly because that's how we're gonna do it. Fake it till you make it,
Nice.
kind of thing. So, yes. So,
Oh, yeah.
hello, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Lustration Day 2. We have with us Reverend Moonraven Yuvantus. Hello, Moonraven. How are you doing
Hello.
today?
I'm awake now.
Awake now.
Yes,
Yes. So
it is
are
now.
we. Let us cheers to that. And so Moonraven, you're going to be talking to us today about the lost gods of Ethiopia, but you may introduce yourself more if you wish. Otherwise, take it away. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, my name is Moon Raven Juventas, and so I am in the process of finishing up my first degree lessons. It's been between pre-calculus algebra and a bunch of other things. This has been quite a trek, but nothing has been, it hasn't been wasted time. I will say that this has been quite a journey. Um, you always learn a bunch of stuff regardless of what it is that you're doing. So there's always something to learn. Any kind of path. So anyway, so this is a class lecture workshop that I actually am proposing to do for that I'll be taking across the country, places like Paganicon and Mystic South and such, because it's something that means a lot to me. It's a part of my birth history, a part of my birth heritage. Um, I identify as African Greek because I'm adopted. Um, my birth mother is from Uganda, which is kind of in North Central Africa. My birth father is from Zimbabwe, which is more of a South Central Africa. Um, a I found out my birth mother, or at least I had an opportunity to speak with my birth mother for the first time in 2014 briefly. And this ended up being the same year that it's like I spoke to my birth mother, had this kind of bombshell. The next day I told my dad, who my adoptive father, who at the time was dying of cancer, who took it in stride and was really cool, quit smoking that same day. He ended up passing away like the end of that year. And I ended up having more conversations with my birth mother, who kind of dropped some more bombshells on me. And when I say bombshells, it was more of just like factual information and things that I didn't know. And a lot of it was more of when I was just understanding more of who I was as a person, and understanding that I didn't really have any connection to America, or at least to the Americas. That all of my lineage was dealing with a lot of northern Africa, going, Ethiopia, going into Greece, and then even parts of like Iran and such. So that was major for me. And what that kind of got me on a tip was I was looking at how I had issues with when I started going onto a trek with finding some stuff with like African traditional, and I had had some problems with dealing with that various traditions, and people getting raked over the coals money wise and all that kind of stuff. And that's a whole other discussion. I'm not going to get into that here. Um, but so my first slide, we'll flip to this slide to the first one, is when I put here of why. And my why is just simply as to why I did this is because I think that there should and must be an entry um, for African traditional that is other than African diaspora. There's a lot of our people, a lot of Black people, a lot of melanated and non-melanated people who are coming into, who are basically coming in from European traditions, who are basically being shunned or being turned away by people that are NATRs. That's not fair. um, we're not really choosing how we come into something, and it shouldn't be a place of judgment. It should be a place of acceptance. And so it's been so for the last 5 years. This has definitely been something that I have just kind of used as like a mission of mine. And what I really got from my mom was information, as I'm about to share with all of you. When I started to see that, not so much that a lot of African traditional religions are being done wrong, but I could just see that between colonialism and a lot of stuff that they've been just taken over by people who are now using things or have been using things for their own purposes. It's not even for bringing spirituality to people. It's because they want something from someone. So I'm focusing more on having a gateway rather than looking at people being a gatekeeper. And me being part Oromo, having some Ethiopian blood, I actually find a lot of that to be very distasteful. I actually find that to be very offensive because a lot of these traditions have just been bastardized. So that's really where I'm coming from. So you'll anytime that you'll talk to me, whether on the membership board or what have you, people can always come and talk to me about stuff like this. And that's just where I'm coming from if somebody ever wants to know. I'm not a person that's judgmental because of where you came from or what have you. I'm just someone that it's about getting results. We have to find where we are spiritually, and we are going to where we're coming from, where we came from. So it's not a judgment as to where you came from. It's about where you're going. That's always, what where I'm going to look at you with. So this part here, vitalism equals animism. Most traditions that we would know in the West, and so there's that word animism. Animistic things. Atmosphere, elemental, earth-based. So in the East, that there is a term in for like an African spirituality, and then we call it vitalism, and it's about getting back to an African vitalistic spirit, the true spirit, the true elemental spirit. This is, not um, the payment of money for something, and specifically just meaning that this is not something that is initiatory. This is a point of African spirituality that is really about your heart and your mind, your soul, your body, getting to the roots of why you're coming into experiences to begin with. And specifically, if you are non-melanated, I usually have a more interesting time talking to people who are non-black, because there is a reason why there is some kind of a spark or this thing that has attracted someone to come into an African tradition. And where others will sometimes be, okay, well, why would you want to do this? Yes, it's a cultural thing, but there's a reason for that. So let's explore that more. And so, any Corellian or such, or anybody that I'm talking to, just as long as people know that that's where I am. So people can always know that if you're talking to Moonraven, that's where Moonraven is coming from. So just so we can be clear with that. Um, so my people came uh, from the Xanthi region of Greece, which is kind of in the northern peninsula. They're African Greeks. There's a mix of like Greek and Sudanese. A lot of them came from the we were basically slaves brought there from the conquest of Alexander the Great, who is actually one of my ancestors. That's actually been an interesting trek in the last few years. Um, he's been an actual wealth of information, and there's a lot of strength and power that actually comes from connecting with that particular ancestor. And that has actually taught me a lot of, especially a lot of even of African tradition based off of that. So that's, when we talk about the ancestors and learning about your ancestors and learning from ancestors that you normally would not have, uh, that you would not have thought that were in your ancestral line, that's something that I can attest to. I wouldn't have not have instantly thought that I had any connection with Alexander the Great, and then look at where this actually took me. 4 or 5 years later. So so we'll go to the next slide, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. There's a whole bunch of different African traditional religions. There's not just one particular set. There are more similarities than differences. Most of them will have the higher and lower spirits, gods, such the veneration of the dead, so, ancestors, traditional African medicines, use of magics, um, animistic, as we said. There's a polytheistic aspect, so you have multiple deities. You start to get into Orishas and such. The role of humanity, you are dealing with connecting this part of nature to somewhere of the supernatural. There is a particular part of this that I wanted to emphasize, that because that there are so many similarities with between the African traditional religions, in particular, there is really a lot of what you're seeing on this slide. This is pretty much exactly the same or almost the same for Indo-European religions. When you look at like Serbian native faith, when you look at a lot of, Druidism, you go into, Finnish Suomi, and a lot of these Indo-European smaller cultural traditions, you'll see a lot of the same thing. They use magic, they use their traditional medicine, it is ancestor veneration. They will have a supreme deity, but then they have the higher and lower spirits. So it is very much set up the same. Um, at times, it will make you wonder why historically there has been such a continental divide, and why it has been made, especially in America, through a lot of our sources, have made it to be that these are like so separate, especially that things coming out of Africa are so wicked and evil and bad and nasty. Now, most things that, when it is made to be so wicked and nasty and ugly, yes, it ends up being black. It ends up being African. It just means that it's ours. Not that it's bad, it's just ours. Um, that's this colonialism at work, unfortunately, and it's something that we're fighting as a society. I think as pagan people, I think we're also fighting that, and largely we're winning, but the fight is still there. Um, I'm not going to go too much further into that. Um, I don't want to get too political or anything. Um, but this is something that I wanted to emphasize, especially when we start getting into the lost guides, is that most of my discussion here is um, there is a lot of our history in African history that is very much tied up in Indo-European history. And again, there is a lot of our history that has just been lost and snuffed out in the way that history was talked about, in the way that it was remembered. Because yeah, you can actually find us in Greek mythology. There's the role of us that is actually found in some Slavic mythology. You know, in a lot of Vedic material, there's a lot of African history. Um, it's a very large world, and magically, mystically, we've got a lot of rich history. There's a lot of rich culture out there, and it's really cool. Um, I think with traditions like ours, and there's other traditions out there, but I think that that moving forward, we're actually moving into times where we're able to um, rise forward and rise above a lot of the separations of the past, and now we're able really to connect with one another, specifically culturally. We have a lot of people of other nations that are within that are in witch school, that are in the Karelian tradition. I talk to a lot of people that speak Greek all the time on the Karelian membership hub, and that's really, really, really cool. That's really valuable for me because I'm able to really connect culturally in something that traditionally in America, Wicca is not known for its cultural for like its culturalism per se, whereas Corellian is, or at least it can be. So that's actually something that is very that I feel that we're actually very fortunate. So this is again one reason why I wanted to do this workshop, or at least to be able to present this workshop, to be able to get dialogue started, to get people talking and such. Um, so we'll move on to the next slide. Um, Not all African traditional religions have a focus of Voodoo or like an Orisha focus, because I'm not really into that either. That's not really where I'm focused with. So this was also something else that I learned from my birth mother. Strangely enough, now I have not had a lot of conversation with her after that, because Uganda is hugely, hugely, hugely Christian. So the double-edged sword of this is that I spoke to my birth mother in 2014 and really haven't spoke to her since. So if anything, I got a whole bunch of information from my birth mother and have never spoken to the woman again. That's okay. Um, but at least I found out the things that I needed to know about myself, and I was able to keep moving. So some of the other types of African traditions that are some things that are, I would that are devoid, or at least a bit left field of what people would classify as like the Voodoo styled of African traditions, would be Wakafana, which is the Ethiopian native faith religion. This is something that is very, 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 very scarce. Very scarce, maybe like 2%, 2 or 3% of Ethiopia still, classifies themselves as Oromo. So for that reason, you can't really go get initiated per se. It's something that you'd have to go, the old fashioned way, the classical route. So you would have to have your initiation, by the gods, which I think is a lot purer anyway. You're going to get something that you're not going to get raked over the coals and, having to pay a large exorbitant amount of money and then taken for a ride or what have you. Another example of non-Voodoo oriented African tradition, is a pre-Christian Arabian polytheism. This is also something that is coming out of Ethiopia, um, because of location. Uh, and this is, uh, nowadays when we hear the word Allah, we hear Allah, and people are referring to that as God, and praying to Allah. Okay, Allah back with this is not even a god. That is actually just a title, which is interesting. So that's not a god. That's a title, and it's a title that was used for a number of different deity, um, and they were all not masculine. Some were feminine also. Um, the Kushit, meaning and which was the Kemetic, that um, the kingdom of Kush was what was called Egypt. And I'm a little I'll have to talk to Lord Don about that at some point. I haven't had time to do that because of the pandemic and all, with some of my research. Um, but Egypt has had some influence and a lot of identity influence with Ethiopia, and some connections in with that. Um, and finally, which is something in my forte with this, is the Ascumite mythos. Is so these are now, like I said, there's more African traditions that are non-voodoo based, but I wanted to focus just on a few, um, for the purposes of this discussion, because we're mainly because also the amount of deities. Some of the sources that we're having to deal with are not, coming out of Ethiopia. They're not easy to find, and over time, I have dealt with like the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and so sometimes when you're asking Ethiopian Christians about pre-Christian deities, you have to make sure they're not going to try to beat you off with a stick or something. It's just, so you have to be careful with that, and have to not get thrown out of the room. Um, so the sources are there. It's also written in Amharic. I don't read Amharic well. I'm understanding the alphabet. I'm more fluent with Greek than I am with Amharic. Even though some of our Greek deities like Zeus and Poseidon and Ares have actually been worshipped in Ethiopian pantheons, and sometimes you can find those names in their mythos. I'm just not. I'm not fluent on that, so I'm not. So it was just a time factor also. So that's, as you can see, this is definitely a rabbit hole for me. I have Indo-European and I've got Africa, and I'm stuck in this part of the world, and I am going in directions, and so there is no telling where we're going to end up. So I'd like to begin. We can go with the next slide, and we will start with Wakafana. So this is um, the Ethiopian native faith, and the supreme god is Waka. There are no images. You are not going to find a lot of images of these deities, because um, they're a lot of statues and such, just because these are so old, these are so ancient. These are not as refined as other cultures also. So because of the rawness of this, and um, a lot of forces of nature and such, the way they are called, the way they are worshipped, the way they're respected. So that's kind of how we're dealing. Um, Waka is The first African deity that I had made some prayer to that did not have some weird attachments to it, or something was happening that it was some kind of a chink in the armor. This was the first deity that I actually experienced some African vitalism. I'm not anybody who deals with Orisha tradition. I'm not suggesting that Orisha tradition is wrong. It just wasn't for me. I'll just leave it at that. I've spoken to other people, and for some of us, we're just not geared for that. Um, Waka is a great father, so he is a silent one. He is very much, you connect with him uh, very much like a silent father. He is everywhere and then he is nowhere. Um, so it's not a matter of being like on an altar. You wouldn't actually pray to him on an altar as much as you would just like pray to him like you would be praying, just like breathing the air, the world, like the world soul. Um, that African vitalist spirit. You take it in your head, your heart, your mind, your body. That is Waka. And he does listen. It is said sometimes with a lot of traditions, that these are deities that they don't interact with humanity and all of that. That isn't necessarily the truth, from my opinion or from my understanding, from my perspective. What I have been able to see is that there are people that often it's the way that they are making their prayer, or just as to what they may be expecting to happen. These are just grassroots deities, and there's some cool shit that happens when you actually call to some of these deities too. So we'll just put it that way. Um, However, this is the one that is going to be really cool. Is the great goddess Atete. Now, she is the goddess of the Amoro people. Now, she is fate, life, abundance, fortune, and wealth. She is who ultimately, was kind of assimilated into like their Mother Mary, into like the Christian Mother Mary. I think they call her Mayame now. A lot of the Somalis and such, and that's fine. It's you don't have to take it in that regard. Atete is very warm. This is like your, not just your mother, but this is like your grandmother, your grandmama. This is Big Mama. So uh this is the woman then that watches over your house. This is the woman then that just takes care of business. Um, if mama's not happy, then no one's happy. That actually is true in this regard. Um, if anyone is actually wanting to experience some, to actually get into some African tradition, this path going through, not, and you don't actually have to become like devoted into Wakafana, but actually kind of experience Waka and with the Tete. This is actually a good way to actually enter, because the Tete will open the door for some other avenues, even through some Orisha spirits, if that's how people actually go through. Um, it's warm. That's probably the best way I could actually, describe that as warm. There is this undying sense of warmth that you may not have felt for a long time, especially if you're like, I'm adopted. So a lot of us adopted kids, there's times that when you have ever felt, or if you've ever known adopted children, that you've been thinking that you didn't know where you were from, or that sense of loss. This is a goddess that can actually help restore that. um, especially for us, for us Black people, for us people of color. Um, we have the Ayana. These are spirits. Now, these would be attributed to like the Orisha spirits. The Ayana are spirits. They will actually, they're free spirits that will actually possess certain people, and that is kind of how priests and priestesses would be made and such. I haven't gotten that far into um my practice of wakafana. I'm not actually taking it into the sense of wanting to initiate to become a high priest or high priestess, something like that. I'm really going, really just, I need to find myself, and I need to uncover my own spiritual center, uh to find my heart. And so the Ayana spirits will certainly help you. They will help anybody. That's another thing, is these are not just Congo spirits. They're not, they're not spirits of people then that are going to look at you if you are non-melanated and say, oh, okay, so you're not one of us. So um the Oromo people are among the first people to have hit Africa, but that does not mean that they are going to turn people away because they don't look like them or something. Again, this is because they've experienced their own form of persecution and all such. So that's a part of that African vitalism. That's a part of that vital spirit. And that's important. That's something that's been lost in a lot of African traditions, um, modernly, and something that has, messed a lot of people up. And so, again, that's what kind of made me go onto this track. Um, so, those of us that have some Oromo, um, like, I get referred to as Gala. I identify myself as Gala, which is a designation for the indigenous religion. Um, if you're an Amhara, that would be that's like saying that you're a Christian. A Muslim is like in Islam, and then Gala means that you're Oromo or you're an animist. So in Ethiopia, you're actually considered one of those three, because those are you have Christian, you have Islam, or you have other. So I would be considered other. I would be a Gala. Um, Very minority, you're not really like persecuted or nothing necessarily, but that's, just like pagans, we're not necessarily the most popular people, but that's I'm not going to be a Christian or an Islam person, buddy. I mean, that's just not me. Um, these are deities that when I was uncovering all this, I was like, this is stuff is beautiful, and this is stuff that nobody is talking about. And most people that have come to me have been wondering, like, okay, I went to Shona, I went to, Yoruba or whatever, and then somebody's, reading my crown or whatever. I've got to pay this kind of money, this, and you're looking for just some religious devotions, this and that, and you're looking for something and they're not finding it. And I'm just like, wow, okay, so now I'm like, okay, this is where maybe they need to be, or this is an idea for them to actually do something different, or to find something that is just them, as opposed to um as opposed to finding something that may be corrupted. You just got to find something that's pure, and then to be able to take it for yourself, and to be able to develop it on your own. And there's nothing wrong with that. So we'll continue, and with the next slide. And this is my all-time favorite, because we get into Aksumite, because this is where we start to get into the connections, um, we start getting into where African and Greek are really mixing, because these are some of these deities and some of these gods were starting to um, be seen even in Greek mythology. When you start to get into a lot of Greek mythos and you start to get into a lot of the Greek literature, there's some interactions with the Aksum, with excuse me, Aksum um, culture in Greek culture, and they had Ashtar, that was their supreme god, who had his identity with the planet Venus. The morning and even star. He was a war god and a fertility god, a god of the sky. He would make the ground fertile, rains and such. At first, I thought he was an earth deity, but it was more of just like a rain and fertility. He had a son, Meher, and that's a god of war. And then there was Beher, that was a counterpart of the god of war. So then Beher is the god of the sea. Meder is the god of earth. And then we had Zat Badar, who was the sun goddess. I always thought that that was interesting when I discovered that, because usually when you're looking through a lot of stuff, you will find uh, a masculine sun, but this was the opposite, and you would find a feminine earth, but you had a masculine earth. So yeah, it's the just I mean, it was Eastern, so you just kind of had just a 180 kind of flip of the polarities. Now, I also tell people, if they want to work or do some ritual with some Askamit deities, there is no real, like, some of them too, if they want to put them into particular quarter designations or such, everything isn't always locked into a particular quarter. And when you start to connect and commune with deity, they'll kind of tell you how your ritual foundation will go with them. They'll tell you how you'll work with them. This is different because this is where you start going into a more of a native faith kind of a mindset. People's rituals and ritual foundations are very personalized. So ritual foundations are not going to look the same. Um, you'll have a lot of the same elements, but they may be just organized differently, and things may be in different quarters and such. This is not wrong. It's connected differently. It's also because each individual, for the East, individuals have different goals. And so your great work, the thing that you're bringing, what your great work is, or what your spiritual goal is, um, is going to determine what the gods have in store for you. And because of that, you're building a temple, you're building a fortress. Your house is like a monolith. So you're building something really strong, and you're building something that is fortified for you. So it's going to be different. Your altar is going to be tailored for you. Your altar is going to, and just all the different things that you have that is going to be for your practice. So that's something different also. um some African traditions have, okay, you have stuff with the pot, and that's how they are. These are not completely like that. There are some spirit pots with some of these. It is not the same as something like Apollo Mayomba. You don't have to have a bunch of dead stuff in your house and um, collecting. If you're collecting bones for, some particular thing or what have you, it's not just to have a Lucero pot for this, that, or the other, and that's the list goes on and on. It's this, but again, I said I wasn't going to complain, so I'm not going to complain. Anyway, we'll continue on. And so the next slide is talking about the four great powers. And this is more of, this was actually more of a historical lesson that some of my students in a couple of lectures that I've done on Zoom in the last month, I've actually made them aware of, is that in the ancient world, you had Ascum, Persia, Rome, and China, that those were the four great powers of the East. Now, kind of take that into perspective, especially from a perspective um, of being melanated, is the how African culture and how African vitalism is viewed in the West as opposed to how it was viewed in ancient East is very different, and how it's been suppressed and stuff like that. So, that's something to contend with. I also say this because when we look at how um, pagan, just general pagan culture has also then been suppressed. So with everything that's going on now, um, being that I'm a Uranus rising and we have this Uranus in retrograde, my statement to the country, specifically to America, is this is the perfect time to start to uncover a little bit that there's a lot of suppression of a lot of things, and there's a lot of us that are really in this together. um, and it's just the time to take the lost and to find it, and to and if we find something that's lost, preserve it, and then and at least expose somebody else to it. We keep it for ourselves, yes, but we at least expose somebody else to it. um, this last little part at the bottom is Ascom, Rome, and India, and I put a little question mark this because it's actually a part of a triad. I'm going to do a ritual meditation about these three cultures, and that what the connection of it was. And somewhere in there was something dealing with Alexander the Great. Um, being the fact that all this was lost, um, we're just in a position now that we have enough technology that the more we find, we should not only learn for ourselves for our own knowledge, but we should also, well, write, not necessarily write a book, but we should, write an essay, not just on Facebook or something, or at least if you're going to write it on Facebook, at least make it good, and publish it and put it into something that's actually going to be relevant, but actually do something that's going to like educate. And so that's as far as my slides. That's all the slide presentations I have. um the last little bit um that I wanted to kind of address is specifically is I wanted to talk about a couple of Greek deities, and specifically it deals with the movie Clash of the Titans. um Cassiopeia and Andromeda. Okay, Cassiopeia, the mother, who, and then you have you have her daughter Andromeda, who ultimately was chained up and all that, and Perseus had to come and rescue her and story. Okay, so all of that really truly happened in Ethiopia. Cassiopeia is a Ethiopian queen, and Andromeda is a Ethiopian princess. So when you look at Clash of the Titans, the film, that's all in Ethiopia. So think about all of that. Okay. It being the fact that it was 1981 in America, there's an understandable as to why they probably didn't make that. But I would really love to see a movie. I would really love to see them make a culturally correct movie of that. I think that'd be cool. But but that's like our, yeah, we have like the Greek, Greek and Africa have had a huge impact on one another, and it's just something that is more of that is coming out, um just more and more, as more technology and more information. And it's just something that, this was just a small lecture. It's something that I continue to uncover and try to write. I'm in the process of writing other books and stuff like that. So this is stuff that I continue to do this. So. But that's the lecture I have. And so I hope I wasn't too off the chain with that or too crazy, but thank you.
That was wonderful. I learned
Thank you.
so much. Holy moly. Are you open for questions? Does
Yes,
anybody
I
have
am.
any questions for Moonraven this morning? Well, this afternoon. Almost afternoon. It's
Yes.
11:57. Yay. So, yes. So, if you have a question, just I'm gonna go to gallery view so that we can see everybody, and unmute your mic or type it in the chat room or something or other, and we will go from there. Questions, comments? Anybody? No? I guess not. Okay, well, tough crowd.
It
It's
is
a
Um,
very nice presentation.
it really
Yes.
was. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that about Corellian. Yeah, people do pay attention. So
generally, even
This
if it
is
doesn't
true.
always, yes, even if it doesn't always appear that somebody is like super hyper focused.
exactly. Somebody
The
asked a question
information.
in chat. It was, oh yeah,
Oh,
what is a good way to get started? A good way to get started with actually would just be prayer. And specifically with taking, if you were going to start with like Wakafana, or with any of the with any of the obscure traditions, begin with the supreme, begin with the top, with the supreme deity, and then just work your way down from there. Regardless of what, you're not going to find a lot of like negative press with that, because you're not dealing with, the controversial ones.
goodness. This was just fantastic. I am so grateful for you, and I am so glad that I could be here to facilitate this for you.
Yes,
I know that
because
you had a little bit of I know that you had a little bit of concern because you were on a tablet, but this was just fine. It was
oh yeah,
perfect the
and I'm
whole way
actually on
through.
my phone, so that works
Oh,
better.
well, there you go. Hooray. Yeah.
Actually,
Getting the thumbs up from Wolf Star. Hi, Wolf Star.
doing the PowerPoint really helped. So I'm glad I did that.
Yeah. Very well done. Hi, Wolf Star. It's good to see you. I'm sorry I didn't say hi earlier, but you snuck in when it was happening. So I was like, oh, Wolf Star is here.
Guys,
Yay.
Hey, hey.
Oh, so great. Oh, you're.
I'm always quiet.
Oh, that's okay. There are quiet people and there are loud people, and we're all just how we are supposed to be, right? So
But yeah, like a lot, but a lot
Yeah.
of but a lot of African tradition, I think has actually gone the way of heathenry and a lot of stuff. It has come down to money. It has come down to a lot of superficial stuff that was really not that necessary. I feel that getting to the roots, to the vital parts of it is and that's the prayer, the prayer and the ancestors. um when you are, and I know that the ancestral part of it, especially if you're going to get checked out by by your elders in a lot of that. So whether you are initiated or not, if you're connecting with the ancestors, you're going to be fine.
mhm, right on. So that is the official end of the presentation, I suppose. But I
Yeah.
am more than willing to stay and hang out for as long as people wish to stay and hang out, because and I'm not really sure where Phoenix et al. Have gone, but I'm assuming that they're watching via Facebook Live. Hi guys, come on in. I sent you the link. Um, Uranus in retrograde. What can we say?
Okay.
It's been a weekend, right?
Oh yes.
No, they seem to have had quite a night last night, setting
They
people on fire and whatnot.
Oh, that was fantastic. I've done that before. I've had my back lit on fire. Like, not like my actual back, but a towel on my back, which was quite fun actually. It was very toasty.
I know
All I
that.
saw was shadows and fire, so I didn't know what was going on.
it was super fantastic. Christina took like a fire stick, which is basically either like silk or some other material on a non-flammable stick, and she
Hmm.
dipped it in probably what was like an alcohol, and she just put it on the forearm of the person, not the inside of the forearm, not the outside, because it would have burned off all the hair, and that stinks to
Nice.
high heavens. So she just drew a line from their wrist to their elbow, held the stick with the fuel at the elbow, and then went boop, and it went shoop, and then the person went shoop, and that's it. And that is it can be scary at first, because like
Yes.
you're like, I'm trusting this person not to seriously burn me.
Wow.
But if you're
Tommy let it go long enough you could actually see the flame. That was pretty cool.
yeah, and she
Well
did for
done.
him, she did like a zigzag pattern too, so that's cool. Oh,
Mm.
you had a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. No, you're fine. Well, no, you go ahead. I mean, if you weren't
No,
finished, go
no,
ahead.
that I was done basically. It
Oh,
was
okay.
just
I had a question, Lord Don. It was about it was peripheral because of what I was talking about the Kushite about the kingdom of Kush
Yes.
and connecting to Kemet. Okay, so learning, okay, Egyptian language.
Mhm.
You have like Middle Egyptian.
Yes.
Okay, is that, I have seen a book on Middle Egyptian that I haven't bought it, but I was wondering, like, is that, if you were going to learn, I mean, is that even like a viable language to try to learn, or would it be something like Coptic? I mean, is that
Well, there's several different forms of Egyptian. There's Old Egyptian, Middle Egyptian, later Egyptian, Demotic Egyptian, and Coptic. Coptic is still spoken as a liturgical language, so you can actually hear it spoken, and you can find that on YouTube if you want to hear what Coptic sounds like. And it can help you to understand the older Egyptian, but nobody knows how it was pronounced. Um, and in fact, writings of the time suggest it was not pronounced the same way throughout the entire country, much like English in the US.
right?
But probably Middle Egyptian would be the one to look at for most of the literature. And there are a number of good books. I can recommend a few. I have a few. They're all packed in a box behind me at the moment in preparation for the move, but I have a significant Egyptian language library. You certainly can learn it, but you have to understand you're learning a reconstruction which may or may not sound anything like the original language, but the grammar, the spelling without vowels, those things people actually do know. They are very well researched at this point. What the vowels would have been is very contentious in certain circles. How it would have been pronounced. What people do is a scholarly kind of reconstruction where they come up with pronunciations based on the spelling, but nobody actually thinks that that's necessarily how it would have been said. It's just the best we can do, since they did not include, for the most part, clues to the vowels. The only way to learn about the vowels in Egyptian is through Coptic and through the Greek, and also the earlier, I want to say the Hittite, both Greeks and Hittites wrote down Egyptian words, and they were right there to hear them pronounced. They were also 1,000 years apart, so they heard them pronounced differently. But, you know, I hear a lot of people say that a lot of people without a background in philology will talk about the Greek version of Egyptian being bastardized. It has been Grecified, but it's probably pretty much how it was pronounced at the time. But it was not pronounced then the way it was pronounced 3,000 years earlier. I mean, if you just look at what's happened with English in 500 years since Shakespeare's time, or go back a little farther to Chaucer, you can barely understand it. Most people, in fact, probably couldn't understand it. And you consider how much longer the span of Egyptian is, those words went through a lot of changes. So Egyptian is a very wide field of study. And in reconstructing the language, like I said, they have a kind of scholarly reconstruction, which allows you to read and write the language. But if you could go back in time, you would not be able to speak it because we don't know how it was spoken.
Yeah, I was thinking about maybe from a, I think if anything, I was trying to get at it would be from a liturgical standpoint, like just being able to find particular words.
Oh yeah, it's all there.
Yeah.
There's some very good.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, there's some very good sources for that.
Okay.
And if you look at Coptic for pronunciation, it seems to me the most sensible course of action.
Okay.
For example, the Egyptian word for great is usually spelled as A in scholarly circles. And how on earth do you pronounce that? But that word is still used in Coptic, and it's pronounced, and I'm not going to get this perfectly, but ao, and that means great. You wouldn't get that from the scholarly spelling, but if you listen to the Coptic, you can see how they say it.
Okay.
Of course, Coptic has been fossilized for about 500 years now. So it stopped developing and became only a literary language. In fact, it probably actually stopped developing much earlier than that. So it preserves an old form of language because the people who speak Coptic for their church are speaking probably Arabic in everyday life, or English, or other languages depending on where they live. But the Coptic language now is like Latin in Roman Catholicism. But if you know Church Latin, although it's different from Augustan Latin, it gives you a clue. And nobody's really certain how languages were pronounced, which nobody has actually heard spoken.
So Coptic is still like,
Coptic is Egyptian.
What's that?
Coptic is the same language as ancient Egyptian.
Oh, okay.
It has a lot of Greek loan words.
Okay.
So if you study Coptic versus ancient Egyptian, there's a huge Greek influence because of the Ptolemaic dynasty and then the Roman Empire, where Greek was the everyday language for a lot of people.
Right, that was Koine. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, you see the same thing in the Greek language. there are so many different forms of it that if you speak one, it can certainly help you to speak another one, but they're not identical.
Right. Okay.
But if you were looking to study the Egyptian wisdom literature, Middle Egyptian would be the place to look. It was generally the formal, educated way of writing, even long after they stopped speaking that way. Kind of again like Latin.
Okay. I think I may start with Coptic.
That would not be a bad thing.
Coptic. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. I like Amharic because the letters, I like barbaric looking letters, just like Mycenaean Greek with linear B. Letters that things that look weird. That's my thing.
Fun.
Yeah. But thank you all for doing. I love doing these presentations.
Thank you.
It's this was a litmus test to well, not a litmus test. I take it more than that, but it's I'm going to be doing this like I said, I'm compiling all this to be doing also for like Paganicon and all, but I like doing it at least on the Corellian level, because at least you can not be too like uptight.
Yes.
Right? We're laid back.
You don't get like things thrown at you if you do something wrong.
No.
Never. I could never even imagine. And Sir Ebony says that thank you so much. She really appreciates this workshop a lot. Stacy says yes, it was absolutely fantastic, and Wolfstar really enjoyed this workshop as well. So hooray!
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess we can stop live and we can just kind of like flow into a work hangout session if everybody wants to do that, or if y'all just want to go spend the rest of your day doing something else, that's fine by me too. So whatever you guys decide. So thank you all for viewing live, and we will talk to you later. Let me stop the live stream. Goodbye, everybody.